We're now going to move on to the upper cross syndrome. And again, another pun for you here. So if your T-spine, that may be holding you back. And although the T-spine is not just the back itself, we're really going to try and focus on some of the things that are going to help us understand what's really going on with the shoulder complex and our rib cage and our upper back to make sure that we're doing the right things. So we're looking at the muscles here. All right, another quadrant that we're looking at for upper cross syndrome, 4 different regions that we're trying to correct in order to make different types of improvements for the position of the shoulder. So in upper cross syndrome, you're mostly going to see rounding of the shoulders, which can also be exacerbated by protrusion of the head. So we want to be able to bring all of that back and make sure that the head is stacked over the shoulders, which is stacked over the torso, and everything is in a straight line, okay? So muscles, weak muscles first. We're looking at deep cervical flexors of the neck. We're looking at the middle and lower trapezius muscles that are on our backside. So we're thinking below our scapula in the bottom side position of our back region. We're looking at tight pectoral muscles, and then also tight upper trapezius and maybe even tight levator scapulae muscles. These are kind of like the Bonnie and Clyde of the shoulder area where we have tightness. These are the ones we're going to really need to work on in order to make sure that we are getting the most relaxation of that area. Before moving on for the actual exercises, let's talk about some common mistakes that I've identified when working with different types of clients who think they know what they're going to be able to do on their own just by doing a quick Google search. So one of the things that I've had clients do that clients have come to me and told me that they've done is that they take a foam roller like the picture describes and they roll out their upper back because they wanted to correct the rounding of their shoulders. Although you may get some clicking and popping from the mobilization of your vertebrae that may provide some temporary relief, it's not exactly going to be productive for you to roll out that region because we're actually rolling directly on the muscles that pull the shoulder blades back. So do we really want to inhibit the muscles that are going to help us pull our shoulder blades back into proper position? I'd say no. When we do those rolls on the upper back, you're laying primarily on the rhomboids right between the shoulder blades, and then you're also laying right on the middle and lower trapezius muscles. So those are the 2 areas that we're inhibiting when we do this roll. And if you're thinking that's going to mobilize and create some mobility of your thoracic spine, temporarily, sure, but long-term, probably not the best. So that's mistake number 1, is using the foam rollers incorrectly. Mistake number 2 is focusing SMR, so self-myofascial release techniques, in the wrong areas. So similar to how we just talked about a foam roller being used incorrectly on the back, if we're dealing with rounded shoulders, it's mostly coming from anterior or superior muscles that are causing the shoulders to round forward. So that's where we really need to focus our SMR techniques. So we're going to show you one today to be able to target the pec major and pec minor muscle to ensure that you're really figuring out how you can put some SMR in that area to help release that muscle and allow your shoulder blade to come back. Lastly is neglecting either the inhibiting or lengthening phase, or even both, of the NASM Corrective Exercise Continuum. So some people, when they're trying to improve their position, they may focus on just stretching, they may focus on just SMR, or they may just be focusing on trying to strengthen weak muscles that they think might be causing the movement to happen. What we need to do is follow something like the Corrective Exercise Continuum, which is a great model to be able to progress from one stage to another in a good way to help you regain proper control of the muscle. Because again, posture is not just bad positioning, it's postural control. So we're thinking muscular control here too, all right? So let's move on to upper cross syndrome here. We're going to start with a upper pec SMR using a elevated surface like a plyo box, and then also a round object such as a trigger point ball, a softball. I like using a softball preferably, but Trigger Point Ball is also a great company that makes a lot of good SMR content or SMR products. The ball is going to be placed directly in your pec, right at the crease of your armpit there. So that's where we're going to be locating it. We want to be able to get the ball just outside of the armpit with your hand on an elevated surface. So you can see I'm using an elevated box here. This is going to help make sure that you have your arm fully flexed overhead when we're in this all fours position. And then from here, we want to roll side to side, okay? So the muscle that we're really targeting here, although we're trying to hit more global pec, is really going to be the pec minor. So when we're in this overhead position, the pec minor is fully lengthened, and it's allowing us to provide a lot of pressure using our body weight right on that site. So by going side to side, you're hitting the pec minor. If you go forward and backwards, so rocking forward and backwards is going to hit more so the global pec major, because that's the pennation of the muscle, okay? It kind of fans out, and we're going across the pennation of the muscle, okay? So with the pec will fan out this way. With the pec minor, it kind of fans up on like a diagonal / vertical region, depending on whether the arm is up or down, okay? So when we're going across like this with the pec major, going across those fibers will help inhibit there. When we go side to side with our arm up overhead, pec minor is where we're really targeting here, okay? So we want to do that on both sides, and when you're finished with this, you should be able to feel some level of increased mobility and range of motion overhead. So we're going to roll side to side, forward to back, get a lot of the pec there. And again, we're not more so on the anterior portion of the pec, we're kind of in the armpit crease. So with that, we're inhibiting, relaxing, and you should be able to feel a better overhead range of motion, okay? So after doing that, there's another technique that I kind of want to show, which isn't really something that's common in terms of mobilizing for overhead range of motion, but we can also target the tricep in a similar position. So I'm going to show this using the arm that's facing you here. If we get our elbow on top of the ball and get our arm out overhead, let's see what's going on here. So with my elbow down, my lat is going to be lengthened on the underside here. So we're getting full length of the lat, and then we're also going to inhibit the activity of the tricep, because sometimes we don't really think, is the tricep causing any overhead range of motion issues? If I'm doing all of these pull down positions and it's causing me to bring my arm downwards and towards the side, does that give me any range of motion limitations? Is it activating the lat in a subconscious way or a secondary way, okay? So the same thing with this. We go elbow on the ball, forward and backwards, get to that point of most discomfort, and then go side to side. Because just like the pec, the tricep goes vertically from elbow to armpit. So if we cross hash those muscles with the SMR technique, we'll get maximum inhibition. Okay, good. So we have that. That's our inhibit phase. Moving on, we have now the lengthen phase. So what are we going to do for that? Although we could target the chest muscles for lengthening, and that's something that you could do doing like a traditional door jam stretch where you put your arms in the door and step forward, we're going to do something a little bit different. I like doing rotational exercises. So we're going to find ourselves in a quadruped position on all fours, and then we're going to drop our far away arm down to our elbow, okay? From here, the free arm is going to rotate back as if you're rowing a dumbbell up or doing any type of rowing motion, and then fully extend, trying to look over your shoulder, okay? So we get a little bit of length from the chest when we bring ourselves back like this, but at the same time, we're getting a good amount of rotation of the torso. So kind of like when you do the upper back foam roll and you get those clicks and pops with the foam roller giving some vertebral decompression, you get a little bit of decompression around the thoracic spine by doing some rotational movements while also getting a stretch of the chest. Now, I like double whammies for exercises because it gives me some time to save to be able to do other movements. So this is a good one to add, especially during the warm-up where you have only a limited amount of time for you to do with your clients. So with this, we can do this for repetitions where you're doing pulling back and down, or you can pull back and look over your shoulder and hold this for time. This is a little bit more challenging to hold for time as like a static stretch, but when you start to get a little bit more length around the torso, your shoulders start to feel a little bit more free as well. So let's do that on the other side too. Give you a couple other things to think about too. And we have a dowel rod here too. So a cool thing that we can do with this is from the quadruped position on all fours, we can have our arm elevated up. So this helps with the stretching of the chest. All right. So if we were to do this, we can actually pull our arm down and actually help increase the amount of rotation around the torso. Really, really awesome movement if you really want to try and open up the chest and the rib cage a little bit more. So again, statically or dynamically by doing repetitions, your choice. Good. So first two phases for that. And one thing I want to add as like a quick little disclaimer for any of these movements that I'm showing you today, these are not end all be all movements. These are creative techniques that you can use and add to your exercise toolbox so that you can use it in company with traditional movements that you might be aware of. So the goal for this is not to give you things that you already know, it's to give you new things that you could use for the future. So just keep that in mind. So now let's move on to the activate phase. In the activate phase, we are trying to really focus on those lower and middle traps, okay? These muscles definitely need some love, even if you feel like somebody has pretty good overhead range of motion, okay? The upper traps of our body over-dominate a lot of the motions because they do elevation and they do a lot of different types of positions of the shoulder girdle. And when it gets overactive, it really causes issues by taking over control of the other movements that muscles like the rhomboids, the middle traps, and the lower traps are supposed to be doing. So basically, it's like the big older brother that is trying to steal all of your glory. But we're not going to talk about that. Let's go on to the floor to start this movement. We're going to be down in a prone position. So this is on our stomachs. And we're going to use, I used a pad for my head, but you really don't have to do this. Let me show you bent over first. We're going to have our palms facing up, elbows come back in a 90-degree position. And then we're going to put this W position out as we kind of fly out here. From there, we're reaching up overhead and clapping and then coming back down. So we're going to do this on the ground. From here, head down, W up, clap overhead, pull back down, okay? So your arms are staying off the ground the entire time, and it's really going to challenge the middle and lower traps to keep your arms up off the ground the entire time. Very, very challenging movement. It gets your scapula moving in a very awesome fashion where it's upwardly rotating and elevating and depressing. It's doing all the movements that it should be doing compared to other exercises that don't allow it to really move correctly. So when we do this, the further away your hands go from your center of gravity, the more tension is put lower on the traps. So it goes from middle all the way down to lower when we come out into the clap position. So when we're here overhead, that's going to be your point of most tension, okay? Because your gravity is furthest away from your body. So that's where we're really trying to do this. I would do this for repetitions of anywhere between 20 to 30 for strength endurance, or you could do it for time to get the same effect. So 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 120 seconds of just continuous repetitions without letting your arms touch the ground. That's going to be the key for you to be able to make sure that you're going to develop the strength and endurance for the shoulders to keep back by using the middle and lower traps, okay? From there, once you feel like you have good mobility and good strength of those muscles that are help contributing to this position, we then need to integrate. So for this case, I liked using kettlebells for the picture, but I have a dowel rod here today that we're gonna use. We're gonna do a half kneeling overhead press. And what we're looking for here is the things that would inhibit your ability to go upwards overhead. So in this case, this will be arms falling forward, head protruding out, maybe your shoulders elevating to compensate for the movement. These are all things that happen during the NASM push and pull tests, okay? So you can use this as like a test and retest when you're trying to address upper cross syndrome with your client. And ultimately, the more you do this with somebody, the better movement patterns or motor patterns are gonna be able to develop to ensure that they have great range of motion overhead. In most cases, really look at those middle and lower traps to see if they are the limiting factor because they are so weak or underactive.